Hey Algebra 1, here are your notes for 12.8, day 2, where we're going to be talking about mixed expressions and complex fractions. The simplify complex fractions piece there at the top indicates that if a fraction has one or more fractions in the numerator or denominator, it is called a complex fraction. Basically, the easiest way to see that is right here. These are these problems where we've got so much division going on, it makes our head spin. But after this video, it won't. In order to simplify these, we're going to follow 3 very simple steps. The first one is simplify the numerator. We've been doing that in our past videos, so this should come as no shock to us. It makes sense then that if we're going to simplify the numerator, we don't want to leave anyone out, and our next step is going to be to simplify the denominator. Now, since there's no other piece of a fraction other than the numerator and the denominator, once we've done this, we are going to flip the problem and multiply. And the easiest way to think of this is our keep, change, flip that we normally do with fractions. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first example. If we want to simplify the numerator, step 1, we're going to take 2 plus 4 divided by a, and we're going to make it all into one fraction, just like we did in the last video, one expression. So in this case, we're going to put this over 1. We're going to give it the denominator of a, therefore the top also has to get an a. So we're going to have 2a plus 4 over a on top. Now it's all one fraction, we're good to go. To the second step, we're going to do the same thing, except in this one you'll notice it's already a plus 2 over 3, and since we can't really simplify that any further, we're just going to keep it. So we only need to simplify if necessary. Now the third step is where it gets a little bit messy. So what I'm going to do is I've got a fraction divided by a fraction. We know that means we keep the first being what we simplified, 2a plus 4 divided by a. We change the sign to be multiplication, and then we flip the second fraction, which in this case we didn't have to simplify. So we're going to multiply by the flip, which is 3 over a plus 2. Okay, there's a fourth step. You got me. When it says flip and multiply, what's included in this is solve and simplify. Because even though we followed all the steps, this isn't how we want to leave our answer. We want to take it one step further and actually simplify it. So what I'm going to do here is I notice that I have 2a plus 4 on top. When I multiply that over, it's going to get really muddy. And the reason I want to simplify this first is because if I remove a 2 from the numerator, I notice that when I multiply, I have an a plus 2 on top here and an a plus 2 on bottom over here. I know from previous videos that these are going to cancel and reduce to be a 1. And because I reduced those, it's a lot easier to see now that my final answer is just 2 times 3 over a times 1. Or in this case, 6 over a. So, as you solve and simplify, don't forget those methods that we have learned up to this point, including simplifying by factoring out that GCF. All right, let's do one more together, and then I'll let you try some on your own. First step, simplify the numerator. Okay, well, there's nothing really to simplify, so we're done there. Second step, simplify the denominator. Nope, nothing to simplify there. So we're going to go straight to our third step, which is keep the first, change the sign in the middle to multiplication, and then flip the bottom, which in this case is no longer 4 divided by y, but y divided by 4. Now we multiply and solve. 3y over 4x. We can't simplify, so we keep our answer. All right, now that you've seen one of each of those, go ahead and try the next couple. I know they look a little bit intimidating, but you have the skills. You can do this. Come on back when you're ready to go through them together. All right, hopefully you paused the video long enough to try these on your own. Let's go through them. First step, let's simplify the numerator. Yeah, I can't really simplify it any further. That's good to go. Bottom, it's all one term, so we're good there. Keep the first, change the sign, flip the second. In this case, x squared minus 9 over 1. The 1's cancel out, but I really don't have to write that because 1 times anything is fine. When I do multiply this out, I'm going to get x squared minus 9 over x minus 3. Me being the genius mathematician I am, and you being the genius mathematician you are, notice immediately that this is a perfect difference of squares. So we're going to make that into its factored form. And when we do that, we notice we have an x minus 3 over an x minus 3, which simplifies to a big fancy 1. Now all I have left on top is x plus 3. All I have left on bottom is technically this 1 that it's being multiplied by. So my final answer is just x plus 3. How nice is that? Next up, number 4. This one actually has some simplifying we need to do. So 1 minus 1 over x. We're immediately going to make this x over x because we have to multiply it. So we get x minus 1 on top over x. I know I skipped a whole bunch of steps, but we've already done 12.7, so we gotta be good with those. We have to be real strong with our skills. If you're not at this point, no worries, come talk to me. Let's get stronger together. On the bottom, when we simplify the denominator, we've got 1 plus 1 over x. Similar, I'm going to turn this into x divided by x so that I can make it into x plus 1 divided by x. And now we follow our fractions. Keep the first, change the sign, flip the second. We have x divided by x, which reduces to 1. So now we have x minus 1 times 1, and 1 times x plus 1. When I simplify that, I get x minus 1 on top and x plus 1 on bottom. You might be really tempted to cancel those x's and those 1's out, but don't do it. We haven't done that in previous videos. We're not going to start now. Remember, if they are grouped in parentheses, we can't tear them apart. They're too close, too good of friends. All right, moving on, last one here. This one probably looked the most intimidating, but it isn't. Don't freak out. First, simplify the same way you have been. You've got x over 1 minus 12 over x minus 1. We know from our last video we're just going to multiply this side by x minus 1 because our LCD is x minus 1. So on the left, we're going to get x squared minus x minus the right, which is minus 12. No freak out there. 2, when I simplify the denominator, I get that I need to multiply this one by x minus 2 on top and bottom so that my LCD is x minus 2. When I do that, I get x squared minus 2x minus the right side, which is 8. And now I can keep the first. For the sake of this, I'm going to see if I can simplify these as I keep them. So when I keep the first, I'm actually going to see if there's a way to factor it. I'm not convinced there is yet, so I may not be able to simplify, but let's find out. 4 and 3 give me 1. Negative 4 and positive 3 give me negative 1. All right. So I've simplified the numerator. Keep, change the sign, flip the second fraction. X minus 2 can't be simplified, but I see that I have a trinomial up here, so I am going to try to factor it while I flip it. 8 would be 4 and 2. To get a -2, it'd have to be -4 and +2. Fabulous. Now I can multiply across. As I do this, I notice I have an x minus 4 on top and an x minus 4 on bottom. Those are going to reduce. However, everything else kind of stays the same. I don't have an x plus 3 on bottom. None of these are opposite. So when I simplify, I get x plus 3 times x minus 2 on top, divided by x minus 1 times x plus 2 on bottom. For the sake of being an awesome mathematician, both you and I are now going to FOIL these, just so that we can make them look a little bit nicer. I have an x squared on top. I get plus x minus 6. On the bottom, I get x squared plus x minus 2. Can't simplify that, so there's my final answer. I think 12.8 is an awesome unit, but I totally understand if you're still having a hard time understanding even after all of these examples. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. I'd love to help you out.